recap of last week, right? So part one, I really wanted to talk about the spiritual aspect of money, what our foundation of our hearts should be when it comes to principles of money, and what our culture in America is, and how what the Bible tells us about money. And I talked about the three temptations that Jesus had in the wilderness, right? Our culture tells us we need stuff, right? In America, we all know that our needs are taken care of. And what was another one? Or the culture tells us we deserve everything, right? The devil attacks our pride, tells us we deserve stuff. In reality, God wants us to have a humble character. And then the third temptation that the enemy uses the culture to tempt us is we want more. More is going to make you satisfied. So I wanted that to be the foundation of Money Talks so that we can go into this next message and really talk about how to live well with what God entrusted us, and leave off from where we left off on the first message, which was Matthew. I left off with the verse, Matthew chapter 25, verse 28 through 29, when Jesus was talking about the parable of the three servants. It says, "Then he ordered, 'Take the money from the servant and give it to the one with 10 bags of silver. To those who use well what they are given, even more will be given. And they will have an abundance. But to those who do nothing, even what little they have will be taken away.'" So today's topic is going to be about how to live well with what we are given, right? And three main topics I'm going to talk about is living on a budget, why you should do it, how to do it, what the benefits are, and how to succeed in your career. What does the Bible talk about what character and work ethic we should have, and what are some examples of that? And how to make more in your career, and how to work in a way to where your companies reward you and God gives you favor. Third topic I want to talk about is living debt-free and staying out of debt. And if you are in debt, what to do and how to get out of debt, and how to stay out of debt in America, and it's possible. All right, so those are the three topics we'll cover today. I'm pretty excited about this. This is this is message I've been living for the last 6 months. Anybody I hang out with, talk to, I often bring this topic up. I love this topic, budgeting. It's one of my favorite words. Sometimes it's overused. But we'll start with that. So a budget. What is a budget? Why do we need it? First and foremost, a budget gives you freedom and allows you to take control of your finances, right? We work hard. We want to take control of our income. We don't want your income to be going left and right and not knowing not knowing what you're spending money on, right? In order to first build wealth or I guess be successful, we must first accumulate or take control of the money that we're making. Can't just be giving away left and right. So I've made a few rules, I have four main points when it comes to the budget, and we'll kind of go over them and what the Bible says about budget, if there's verses on it, if there's examples. So let's dive right into it. So rule number one, make a budget. If you haven't been living on a budget, live with a budget, live with a plan, right? If you wanted to get into shape, you go on a diet, you train, you have a regimen. You wouldn't just have this goal and then wish you'd get there, right? You make a plan and you stick to it. So rule number one, make a budget. And your first few things should consist of your tithe, right? You got to give to God what is God's, right? Pay yourself, so save. And your basic needs first, food, rent, and so forth. So a budget helps you prioritize your income. And the really awesome thing about doing a budget, and what Martin and I have really noticed, what it's helped us, is when you start doing your budget, you start prioritizing what's important to you in life, right? Right now, announcements, there's a lot of things. We talked about camp. We talked about mission trips. As you do your budget, you look at what God is giving you, and you prioritize what you want in life, right? It allows you to set goals, right? It gives you a snapshot, maybe of your 1 week, your 2 week, but then you can see your goals. Let's say in a year, you can multiply by 12, by 6, whatever, and achieve your goals that you want to achieve, right? Whether it's go on a mission trip, you want to give a certain amount, you want to buy a car, right? You want to save for a house. A budget is going to help you do that. Right, so as we do our budget, we don't just put what is where We don't just budget for the things that we know we're going to spend on, right? But we look at the things where we look at where our money's going when we're not paying attention. The little things, right? Like I said, when we start to prioritize, we take control of where every dollar is going, right? So even the money that is not you'll say you go over all your expenses or what you think you'll need, whether you're in school and how much money you'll think you'll need for school or for food or whatnot, right? The money left over, tell that money to do something, right? When you set goals and prioritize, that money starts doing something and starts working towards your goal. Just like on a diet, when you have a goal and you want to get somewhere and you have, let's say, a timeline, right? To stick to that goal, you say no to the impulses to fall off that plan. So a big thing on a budget is saying no now so you can say yes later. Right? Whenever I bring it up, that's all it is. You're saying no to the simple latte. You're saying no to the small things now, so you can say yes to the car later. So you can say yes to your dream house, to a mission trip, to camp. Right? Say no now, so you can say yes later. And you can't see what's happening if you don't do a budget. It's like holes in your pocket. Sometimes you'll get paid and it's all gone. It's like, where'd it go? Well, without a plan, it's going to go on coffee. It's going to go wherever. So make a plan. It's going to help you say no to the impulse buys so you can actually get what you really want. I know for me, it was I had to give myself an allowance on coffee and lunch. If I didn't physically give myself a limit per week on how much I would eat out or get coffee during work hours, like let's say my lunch, I would go almost every other day and not really pay attention to it, right? And it would add up. But setting myself an allowance, right? Then I know what I have and I stick to it, and then it actually motivates me to bring my lunch, so I know I'm not spending that money on things that I could avoid. So that was rule number 2: is stick to your plan, right? Give yourself a plan and stick to it. Just like a diet, just like setting a goal for running a 6-minute mile or getting a 4.0 in school. You have a plan and you want to stick to it. And the way you do this is find an accountability partner. Accountability buddies. One of my coworkers made up a while ago. It was one of my jobs that I had a while ago. We had to go in partners to do sales calls, and they call it accountability buddy. That's kind of corny, but if you're single, find somebody to do this with that keeps you accountable. Hey, are you sticking to your goals? If you are training, you're going to have a workout partner, right? Right, Andrian? Right, you're going to have somebody to keep you accountable. So do the same with your finances, right? It's just another aspect of your life, and you want to be accountable, and you don't want to be foolish with your money and always doing impulsive buys. So be accountable. So find either a friend, family member, and just somebody that's going to ask you, hey, how's it going? You sticking to your plan or whatnot. If you're married, it's easy, right? You're always doing everything together. But for those that are single, find a friend, do it together. It's really hard to do it yourself. And sticking to your plan, setting goals is going to help you do that. So bulletproof your plan. Set a goal and stick to it, and then that way you can measure your success. Are you sticking to your budget? So rule number 3. So rule number 1 was make the budget. Rule number 2, stick to your plan. And then rule number 3, the power of focus. This is what really was eye-opening to me and Marta, is how when you focus your finances on a goal, you achieve so much more. So doing a budget allows you to have a focus with your money. You can't multitask your money. You can't try to save this, do this. Assess what season you are in life, set a big primary goal, and focus on that. And you'll see that you'll achieve your goal. You can't, I'm going to bring it back to fitness because this is a very easy example to relate, right? You can't try to train for a marathon, right? Train for the sumo wrestling and have all these different goals, you're never going to achieve one or the other. Focus your finances. Have a goal that you're focused towards. Otherwise, you'll be spinning your tires. You'll be doing a little bit of this, a little bit of that, a little bit of this, and you won't be going anywhere. So power of focus is huge. That's for saving for college. Right? A lot of you guys are in that running start, going to college, or you're in college. Make that be your focus. Set aside other small things. Say no to the things that you maybe really want, but you can live without. Prioritize your one goal and focus on that. So whether it's college, mission trip, that would be that's in July. If you really want to do it, focus. Whether that's a car, if you want a car, a lot of you guys are just getting your license or have your license. If that's your focus, make that goal. Stop other priorities when it comes to your finances. Make sure your budget is prioritized right. Savings, you tithe, save, and prioritize your focus. Whether that's if you want to travel. I know Martin and I love traveling, so have a focus, and your finances will work for you. So rule number 4, I already covered it. Say no so you can say yes later. Right? That's what essentially a budget is going to do for you. Say no to the small things so you can say yes to the big things. I'm going to read first scripture in this budget topic. I know I was running through those points. Let's turn to Hebrews chapter 12, verse 11. And Oles did a great job of setting me up for this message. Proverbs 10 and 11 is full of scriptures when it comes to discipline. But in Hebrews chapter 12, verse 11, it says, "No discipline is enjoyable while it's happening. It's painful, but afterward there will be a peaceful harvest of right living for those who are trained in this way." For the longest time, sometimes a budget seems like it restrains you. It's containing you to not do something. But in reality, a budget, it's discipline now, but it's going to actually allow you to do more. When you do a budget, you find money. If that's crazy, if you guys have never done that, if you guys have never done a budget or don't know exactly where every dollar is going, if I asked you, if you start doing a budget, you'll find money. Because what you'll do is you'll look at where it's going, and you're like, whoa, I'm spending that much there. I don't really need that. You start prioritizing, and you find money for the things that matter. Everybody wants to be in shape, but not everybody's willing to train and eat right. Everybody wants to have money and have nice things, but not everybody's willing to be disciplined with their finances, right? We fall into these little traps of gimmicks of just impulse buys, right? So if I could sum up what a budget does for us when it comes to living well with what God has entrusted us to, right? We're managers of God's finances, of God's possessions, right? First, live on a budget, stick to your budget, have a power of focus, have a plan in your life when it comes to your finances, and say no to the small things so you can say yes to your big goals and dreams. All right, so if you guys have questions for me later or want more information, I love talking about budgets. You guys can hit me up after. But moving on, another exciting thing I like to talk about is career. So when it comes to our work, Ola's just read plenty of verses about being lazy and working hard, and so we're going to get into that. So Proverbs 10:16, I'm going to open up this career chapter or section with this verse. "The earnings of the godly enhance their lives, but evil people squander their money on sin." So it's not about how much we make, or it's where our heart's at, right? The earnings of the godly, right? If your heart's not in the right place, it's not going to enhance your life. It's going to give you inner turmoil. So like we talked about in the first message, we first have to have foundation on Christ in order for our wealth to actually enhance our lives. Otherwise, more money, more problems, right? You guys know that song? Hope not. It's old. Anyways, without God, money's not going to do anything. It's gonna lead you away from God, and it's gonna give you more problems. But when our heart's on the right foundation, our money enhances our lives. We're able to give. We're able to live a life that is enjoyable. So let's talk about how can we make money in our careers and be better at what we do. A lot of you guys are not still finishing school and looking to get into career. So this is good advice as far as how to succeed in your career or where you're at in life. So number one, be honest. That's going to be my number one point, is be honest. It says, if you are faithful, in Luke chapter 16, verse 10, if you are faithful in little things, you'll be faithful in large ones. But if you are dishonest in little things, you won't be honest with greater responsibilities. If you want to succeed at work or in life, in your career, you have to be honest. Because God is the one who gives favor and success. If he sees that you're not faithful at where you are in your position now, most chances are you're not going to get promoted to a bigger position with greater responsibilities and more pay. So first, be honest with the little things. It's your character. What are you doing when nobody's looking? Are you on your phone resting? Or are you hustling and always working? It's your work ethic when nobody's looking. You have to be honest. Don't steal company time. God will see this, and he's faithful to reward you. He's faithful to reward your hard work and your ethics. That was one example. So another example of being honest, right? Other than be on your phone during work hours, right? Is start and stop time. If your company doesn't have a clock in, whatever, is be honest with your hours. If you have to report hours, be honest with little things. Be honest in every aspect of your job, and God will reward you. Point number 2 is care about your company's success, and this is a big one. I have a few verses on this one, but caring about the success of your company, praying about your company, that will further your career. Not only will your bosses see that, but God will honor that. So first verse I want to go to is Proverbs chapter 28, verse 18. I really love this scripture, and I've seen this in my life, and this is a true. This concept is proven, and I always seen it working when it comes to being rewarded at work and God being faithful to it. So Proverbs 27, verse 18. If you want to get that up on the TV, so people can take a note. As workers who tend a fig tree are allowed to eat the fruit, so workers who protect their employer's interests will be rewarded. Right? This kind of goes along with the honest thing, but care for your company's success. Care for your company's best interests, and they will see that and reward you for that, right? If you're not a team player, they'll see that and you won't go anywhere, right? Be a team player so you selflessly will be promoted, if that makes sense. So care for your company's interests so that you will do better, right? This concept goes back to, if you're playing sports, same thing. If you're trying to be the all-star on your team, but your team sucks, what's that going to do for you, right? You want to make sure the success of your company is your first priority, and then you will be rewarded. If your company's doing well, they're going to be able to pay you well. If your company's falling down the hill and you're not helping them with that either, and you're stealing, you're not working hard to turn that around, well, they can't reward you. They don't have the finances to do that. So care about their interests, pray about the company. Another verse about this. So Proverbs chapter 10, verse 26. Oles read this earlier. It was awesome. He just set me up. Lazy people inherit or irritate their employers, like vinegar to the teeth or smoke in the eyes. So this is the opposite, right? So people who care about the company's interests get rewarded, but lazy employees irritate their employers. Right? So you want to be on the good side of your employers, not on the bad side, and don't care about other people who are going to maybe talk trash behind your back. He's the perfect one or the golden boy, right? If you're gonna be succeeding in any company, you're gonna have people hating on you. That's just life. You guys experience it in school and college. It's the same in the workplace. The workplace is essentially just high schoolers growing up, and they have the same character, same issues, same drama. So care about your employer's interest. Don't care about other people trying to call you goody two shoe or whatnot. Be faithful in working hard for your employer, and you'll be rewarded. You'll make more. Point number 3, work hard. Simple point, don't be lazy. And we have another proverb, lazy people are soon poor, hard workers get rich, right? When it comes to hard work, it's not just, it's more than just trying to just sweat and working fast or working super hard without being knowledgeable, but it's more about caring about doing well in your field. Working hard to make sure you understand your job, make sure you do it to the best of your ability. My grandpa had a saying: if you're a pooper scooper, be the best pooper scooper you can be. So wherever you're at, see that as training, see that as opportunity to be the best at what you can do. And we'll have a story on this in a second. And then another proverb, this is another great one. It says, do you see any truly competent workers? They will serve kings rather than working for ordinary people. So whatever you do, make sure you're the best at what you do and that you're competent. You know what that? So that word just means you understand the work that you're doing. You know what's going on. You're qualified. You've done the research. You've done the homework. So if you're in college, study hard for your career that you're going for. If you're already working, go above and beyond and do research at home. Watch YouTube videos. I know I do this all the time. If I see that I need a tool that will make me better at work, I go outside of my way to buy my own tools that make me better at work, right? So be competent in what you do, study, do your homework, and put effort to make sure that you're successful in your task, so that when it comes time to doing it, you're not left like, well, I didn't know that. So put the extra effort to understand what you're doing. So that's really what I want to stress when it comes to work hard. So it's not just so generic. And then point number 4 is God is ultimately the one who gives us favor. Marta and I are witnesses of this. As we've been married and served God and worked, God has always shown us unmeasurable favor in our jobs. And it's not fair, right? But we're God's children, and God will give us favor if our hearts are in the right place and we're serving God. And I want to share a story about Joseph. And it's in Genesis, so chapter 39. I would recommend reading the whole story of Joseph. It's a great example of being a faithful steward and being patient and disciplined, and God rewarding Joseph for that. So you guys know Joseph was sold into Egypt by his brothers, right, to Potiphar's house, right? And so this is when he got into Potiphar's house. Potiphar was an officer of the Egyptian army. He was a rich man, and Joseph was really in a crappy position. He was a slave, right? And so where he made sure that he was diligent and that he did the best that he could. And so we'll read that quick story, that God is the one who gives us favor. So chapter 39, so in Genesis, we want to open that up on the screen. It'll be 6 verses. How you guys doing so far? You guys following along? Am I going too fast? Good? No? You guys got it? Genesis 39, perfect. When Joseph was taken to Egypt, I think I'm starting from verse 2 actually. Oh no, that's it. So when Joseph was taken to Egypt by the Ishmaelite traders, he was purchased by Potiphar, an Egyptian officer. Potiphar was the captain of the guard of Pharaoh, to the king of Egypt. The Lord was with Joseph, so he succeeded in everything he did as he served in the home of his Egyptian master. Potiphar noticed this and realized that the Lord was with Joseph, giving him success in everything he did. This pleased Potiphar, so he soon made Joseph his personal attendant. He put him in charge of his entire household and everything he owned. From the day Joseph was put in charge of his master's household and property, the Lord began to bless Potiphar's household for Joseph's sake. and all his household affairs ran smoothly, and his crops and livestock flourished. So Potiphar gave Joseph complete administrative responsibility over everything he owned. With Joseph there, he didn't worry about a thing except what kind of food to eat. Joseph was a very handsome and well-built young man. Hey, so he even blessed him in that regards too. So as we see, Joseph had success in everything he did, everything, right? And his employer noticed, and when his employer noticed and put him in greater and rewarded him, God rewarded not just Joseph, but his owners, property, house, everything. So just like we read earlier, when we care about the interests of our company, when we're working hard and God sees that, God will bless what we're doing, and not only us, but our whole company. Right? So pray for your company, pray for that God blesses your company, and your employer will see that, and your company will thrive. And it's the same at any level, whether you're in school, whether you're in a small company, a big company, even when it comes to the country. God blesses a country just because of the righteous people living in that country. All right, so that concludes career. So 4 points, right? Be honest, care about your company's success, work hard to be competent in what you're doing, and God is ultimately the one who gives us favor, and our employers will notice, and our company will be blessed because we're working there, right? That's the kind of favor that God gives us. That's the kind of God we serve. So third topic, talking about debt. So live debt-free, right? The borrower is the slave to the lender. So I'm going to go over a few things. I'm going to talk about how to stay out of debt, and if you are in debt, what to do, and then once you're debt-free, how to stay debt-free. And this was a transformation that me and Marta went through. We made a few mistakes. Everybody makes stupid decisions with money. I'm not exempt from that. And so we made a mistake. We made a few mistakes that led us into debt. And so for a while, we really didn't see a light at the end of the tunnel until we started seeing it in a different way, and then really using the power of focus and actually just paying off debt versus instead of trying to multitask what we're doing with our money, and really transform our future in a big way. So I'm going to talk about a few principles to do to not be in debt. If you're not, most of you guys are young, so how to stay out of debt, and if you are in debt, what to do about it. So number one, so debt robs your income and doesn't allow your income to accumulate. So that's what the bad thing about debt is, right? It makes you a slave to a lender. We've heard that many times. It's in Proverbs. But why? Because the thing we work hardest for, we're giving it away, right? And then you can't build anything. You can't move forward because you're paying for the past, and you're robbing yourself from the future, right? Your future needs of money that should be accumulating, you're paying for things that were in the past. And so debt is a thief to your income, which income is what is going to build your wealth. It's going to accumulate. So you're being robbed there. So how do we avoid going into debt as you guys are entering adulthood? Point number one is have an emergency fund. Have money saved up that's going to be a cushion between you and debt. That's what an emergency fund is for. It's going to keep you from a car that breaks down, or if you lose your job, or health issues, from you going into debt. So don't spend all the money that you get. Like we talked about having a budget, the savings that you're saving for, have money set aside. That way, if you lose your job for a few months and you're living on your own, you won't be forced to borrow money to get yourself out of emergency situations. And a big reason why most people go to debt is from emergencies, right? Not having this cash saved up, and then emergencies happen. And who knows Murphy's Law? Who's heard of that? Anything that can happen will happen. Stuff does happen in our lives to Christian people and non-Christian people. There's tragedies in life, but we have to be prepared, right? And so you have this emergency fund to keep you. It's a cushion between you and debt. And it's not for a vacation that you can't live without or a pair of shoes. It's for emergencies. Just like we talked about in our budget, we have priorities, and it's not for things that you want impulsively, but it's when, let's say, you lose a job, you have a health issue, your car breaks down, something that you cannot that's something that is an emergency that needs to be taken care of now. And this money shouldn't be touched, should be kept in a secure savings account. There's multiple ways you can do that, but it's money that you can access if you have an emergency. And this is super, super important. That way when something does happen, you don't go into debt. And going back to Joseph, so biblically, where do we find, a lot of people always will argue, well, that's not living by faith. You're saying that God's not taking care of you. Well, God gives us wisdom, and He wants us to be faithful, and He wants us to be diligent with the way we live our lives. When Joseph was in prison, the Pharaoh had a dream. You guys know the dream? 7 years of plenty, 7 years of famine, right? Bad things will happen in life. We're here on earth. Earth is not perfect. All right, so I'm going to read that story very quickly, and we'll move on. It says, this is when Joseph was explaining the dream that Pharaoh had. So he already explained the dream, and this is Joseph giving Pharaoh advice, because Pharaoh just found out, hey, they're going to have 7 years of filthy, filthy rich crops, and they're going to be po for another 7 years. They're going to be in a famine. So this is Joseph's godly advice to the Pharaoh. Therefore, Pharaoh should find an intelligent and wise man and put him in charge of the entire land of Egypt. Then Pharaoh should appoint supervisors over the land and let them collect 1/5 of all the crops during the 7 good years. Have them gather all the food produced in the good years, years that are just ahead, and bring it to Pharaoh's storehouses. Store it away and guard it, so it will be there. And guard it, so there will be food in the cities. Right? They had an emergency fund. They knew they were going to have a famine, and so they saved up money when time was good. They didn't spend it all. They weren't living paycheck to paycheck, right? When times are good, we can spend when we don't live on a budget, right? I've been there when I was younger, when I was dating. When me and Marta were dating when we were younger, I used to spend all my money, and I'm like, where did it all go? I have no bills. All my money's gone. And so since then, we've learned. But having a budget and having this emergency fund will keep you away from debt. Right? And we know that when Egypt did go in that famine, right, everybody came to them. Almost that whole surrounding area, or the world at the time, was saved because Egypt had this stash of grain, and they were able to sell it to the neighboring cities and countries and so forth. All right, part 2. If you do have debt, what do? Pay it off, and quick. Don't let it hang around like a pet. Going back to focus, if you do have debt, stop at their priorities and let paying off your debt be your focus. So you, with intense focus, pay it off as soon as you can so you can get out of that and move on with your life. Everybody makes mistakes. Everybody, and the problem with debt in America is society doesn't punish you. It's a good thing. We have who knows FICO score? Yeah, who has an 800 score? It's society benefits, we have benefits in society when we have debt. It's a good thing. Build your credit score. There's no social repercussions for having debt. You have a car loan? Awesome. No social repercussions there. Everybody looks at your fancy car like, dang, it's a nice car. Now I'm like, that's a nice payment. So there's no repercussions for debt, and so that's why it's very easy to make mistakes. And I'll share how we made our mistake and bought our car when we financed it. So who remembers my white Jeep? I had like a white little Jeep a few years ago. Anyways, I was young and dumb, didn't put oil in it, didn't take care of it for a little bit, and my engine started rattling a little bit, started making a noise, and so I knew that this car was on the way out. So I'm like, uh-oh. And right before that time, the emergency fund that Marta and I had, I lost my job for a few months, and so we lived off the emergency fund. And so Murphy's Law came, so our emergency fund was very low, and my car's dying. So I knew it was already maybe 2 weeks left on this car. The pistons are rattling. If anybody knows what rod knock is, essentially your pistons go up and down 1,000 times per second. That's what your RPMs are. and it was misaligned. So it was making, it's like when you put a pop can on your bicycle tire. That's what it sounded like. It was very loud. And I took it to the shop. They're like, you have about a week left and your engine's going to blow. So I'm like, okay. And at the time, I didn't know any better. So we're like, okay, I'll drive it in, trade it in, and get a car, and finance a car. And so we're driving it down to 277th on 167, or like right next to that exit. There's actually a junkyard on that exit. And so ironic enough, I'm driving and my car, so it's like the noise is super loud at this point. Like it sounds like there's a popsicle stick on the bicycle spokes. It's like super loud. It doesn't sound like a normal car. And then the car goes boom, 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 boom. It just comes to a halt as if you throw a brick into the washing machine. That's what it sounded like. And so oil spilled out the engine. And so a tow truck towed it. So I was going to tow it to the junkyard, which is like a mile away. And so the tow truck driver actually bought the car off me instead for like $100. So my sister picked me up, and we went straight to the dealership, just like any normal American, and we bought a car. And at the time, we didn't see the mistake that we made, but later on, we saw that the loan squeezes your income, and then it prohibits you from doing the bigger plans in life that you want. So we made this mistake, like a lot of young people make, and so since then, when we saw it as a mistake, we started knocking off all our debt that we had to pay off all our debt and be debt free and move on. But step one is seeing that it's a problem, right? A lot of people have car loans, and it's not don't be guilty if you've made mistakes, but see it as a mistake and move on. And what the Bible says about it. Proverbs chapter 6, verse 5, it says, save yourself like a gazelle escaping from a hunter, like a bird fleeing from a net. That's how you should get out of debt. With intensity, pay it off, move on. Otherwise, it'll stay around, you'll pay interest, and it'll linger. So if you made a mistake and you do have debt, right, see it as a mistake. See it as you need to move on. Pay it off and move on. If I can have Taras on the keys, we'll finish up. So wrapping up, right? In order to live well with what God has entrusted us with, we have to see ourselves as managers of God's assets, right? It's not our money, it's God's money. So let's be wise with it. Live on a budget. Don't spend more than you make. Plan and focus and have goals with your finances so you can achieve what you want to achieve. Work hard in your career, all right? Be honest. Care about your company's success. And ultimately, God gives us favor. And live without debt. It's possible, and there's great reward to those who live a disciplined life with finances. And it's tough to do with our culture. It's counterculture. It's not normal to live this way. But it's possible, and God will reward those who are faithful with little, and He'll entrust you with more. One of my favorite Psalms is Psalm 1. Right? Oh, the joys of those who do not follow the advice of the wicked, or stand around with sinners, or join in with mockers. But they delight in the law of the Lord, meditating on it day and night. They are like trees planted along a riverbank, bearing fruit in each season. Their leaves never wither, and they prosper in all they do, but not the wicked. They are like worthless chaff, scattered by the wind. They will be condemned at the time of judgment. Sinners have no place among the godly, for the Lord watches over the path of the godly, but the path of the wicked leads to destruction. So ultimately, our success lies with serving God. Those who serve God will be successful no matter what career they choose. God will show them favor. God will mold your character into the person that you ought to be.